Hello! So I just finished reading a book, which I borrowed off a friend last year. I'm just lazy. It's a book called The Power, science fiction novel. It's about women all over the planet find that they can produce electricity and shock people, and it's basically how that affects the entire world. There are going to be spoilers in this video. If you're planning on reading the book, maybe don't watch, but the spoilers are probably going to be minor, and also the plot isn't that important in terms of the big picture. The important part is the writing and the characterization of each of the viewpoint characters that the story's told through. So it's your judgment. I don't think it'll spoil the book, and I'll try not to spoil it too much, but yeah, it's up to you. I like the book a lot. I do have some problems with it, but they're quite personal, I suppose. Not everyone is going to have the same issues with it that I do. I suppose I'll begin with how the book is written. So basically, at the start and the back, there are some emails going between some fictional journalists in the far, far future, and they are piecing together a history of what happened. I suppose still in the future from where we are, but it's way in the past from where they are. It's 5,000 years. I'm explaining this really badly. I'll put up a timeline on the screen to make it more easy to understand. And you'll notice that the dynamic is very different from what we have in the real world at the moment. It seems most of the sexism is aimed towards the man of the pair of them, which is not something you would expect as much in the real world. And that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the book. And then the rest of the book is told from the perspective of 4 different characters as girls start to develop this electric power, and changes start happening throughout the world because of it. And we mainly stick with the same 4 characters throughout the book. There are a couple of other perspective characters, and I'll go into that in a bit. It's something that I was not too sure on when I was reading it. But yeah, I'll keep doing plot and then I'll go into that later. So our 4 main characters. Our first one is Ali. She is an orphan who's kind of being handed between families a lot, and she's in an abusive household at the moment. And when she develops her electric powers, she uses that to escape, really. And then she goes on to kind of set up her own church, which gradually picks up more and more followers, and it's this big religion. Another character we meet is Roxy. She's kind of the daughter of this criminal family, and her story opens and her mum is killed by gangsters, and she electric shocks one of them and manages to get away. Her story kind of follows her rise through this crime family, and her powers are really strong. So she is how she uses those to further the interests of the family. There is a journalist called Tund. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Basically, he is in the kind of the right place at the right time and manages to record a lot of stuff on his phone of the first things that are happening, and then he travels around the world to where big revolutions and stuff are taking place. But he is a man, so he does not have the power the women in the story have developed. So it's kind of how he feels about that, and while he's documenting it, and how safe he feels in the world that's changing. And the 4th character is Margo. She's an American woman who's in politics. When the dynamics kind of shift and women are more powerful and they're more confident, she's able to kind of push her way up in power, and eventually she ends up Secretary of Defense or something. I don't really know how American government works. It seems pretty important being in charge of that. I mentioned that there are a couple of other characters who get point of view chapters. All the chapters are point of view chapters in theory. Each chapter has the character's name as the chapter title, so you know who you're following in the story. But as the book went on, sometimes you would get here's a Margo chapter, but it's told from the point of view of someone that she knows. And I think I might have preferred it if it was always in the point of view of that character, to keep it consistent, because later on they do 2 other character point of view chapters, and they're characters we already know. One of them is Daryl, who is the cousin of Roxy, and one of them is Jocelyn, who is Margo's daughter. And they work. It was interesting to have those chapters separate from the point of view characters we've had before. I wish the point of view chapters earlier in the book kind of stuck with the character they were supposed to be following. And like sometimes it was good to get a bit of the extra perspective, but I wish it was more consistent, I suppose. So I think I mentioned the plot, the big picture plot doesn't matter too much, and I feel like that might put some people off. Like if you like a big like sweeping epic story, this isn't going to be it, because while the characters are important in the world, the big overarching story is not what is being told here. Rather than how the decisions affect the world as a whole, it's how the decisions being made affect each of these characters, which worked quite well for me. I really like learning about how all the characters think and that kind of thing, but I understand that a lot of people do enjoy a more plot-oriented story, and this might put you off a little bit. You understand what's going on in the wider world, but you don't get the focus on it that you might like. The book is told in kind of big chunks, and each of the big chunks is like titled as 7 years to go, 6 years to go, 5, 1 year to go, 7 months left, and then like here it comes. Throughout the book you are told that we are counting down to something, and you think it's going to be a big event, but we never reach the event, and you know what it is. Maybe I won't spoil it, although given that the book is bookended by chapters of people trying to figure out what happened because they don't have the history of what happened, that might be a clue that perhaps there were not people around to tell the history. So you do have that countdown, and that is kind of what is dragging the story forward plot-wise. But because you've got big jumps, like you jump years at a time, and occasionally you jump like multiple years, the plot of this book is not what keeps dragging you forward. It's the characters and their emotions and how they're feeling about the different situations they're in. And yeah, like I say, that might put some people off. It works well in the book. Another thing about this book is it's very graphic. It is something that's going to vary person to person. The book does feature quite heavily sexual assault, and there is like body mutilation in this book, and it makes it very difficult to read. I don't know, I'm not someone who gets like massively affected by this kind of thing in books, but it was genuinely really uncomfortable and really disturbing to like read some of the things that happen in this book. So if that's something that bothers you, like, while I do think the book is very good and worth reading, if you think that is something that would put you off, there's no shame in admitting that, because it's genuinely very distressing reading what's in here. And I think that's a compliment to the writing, that it is so effective, but also it's going to make it really difficult reading. And when I was towards the start of the book and I encountered some of this, I was kind of put off and it made me a bit hesitant to keep going. And I'm glad I did keep going, because it's a very effective, very well written book. All the characters are really interesting, and the world building in the book is amazing, but you do have to get past, like, there's a lot of graphic detail and horrible events happening in here, and it's kind of the point. The point is, with these big sweeping changes happening across the world, you do have horrible things happening, and it's realistic, and that's what makes it so hard to read, but also what makes it such a well written book. All the characters in the book are very interesting, and we like them. They all experience bad things in their life, so it feels good reading it as they succeed. I would say none of our protagonists are heroes. In fact, if the book was written from a different perspective, pretty much all of the protagonists could be seen as villains quite easily, and I think that is something that the book does really effectively. So let's talk about Ali's story. So Ali is abused by her foster family, and when she develops her power, she uses that to kill her adoptive father and escape. And she runs away. She joins a convent run by a bunch of nuns, and there's a load of other kids who join her there, who've either been like kicked out of their home or they've run away because they've developed this power, and the adults don't know how to handle it, and it's scary. So there's this big group of kids together, and Allie is quite quick to learn to use her new power, and she basically uses it kind of as a healing tool. I mean, I'm not going to go massively into it because I'm not a biology expert or a doctor or anything. But since like there's a lot of electricity and like nerves and stuff, she can kind of touch someone, kind of use her power to heal it by like sending jolts of electricity where someone needs it. So she, in this convent, kind of uses her power to heal people, but she also heals people to kind of further her position. And she starts like preaching a new religion that is like, it's the same as Christianity, but instead of worshipping Jesus, you worship the mother and like the women in the Bible instead of like the male character. One of the nuns in the convent tries to like speak out against her and say that she's been possessed by the devil, and Allie makes her have a heart attack. And then as the story goes on, Allie begins like accruing all these followers and becoming more and more powerful. She goes to this new sovereign nation that gets set up called Bessaperia, and she's like supporting this new nation in their war with like neighboring countries, because she holds so much power because people believe in her. Like, they've seen her heal people in what seems like miracles, but it's just because she's learnt to use the power quicker than other people have. Like, while she's helping people, she's also lying to them all and using it to get more money and funding, and so she can get more power. Like, she kills the leader of this nation and takes over herself. Allie is one of our point of view characters, but it doesn't mean she's good. And I think that is something the book does really well. You are given all the information about the characters. That's the phone. I need to go answer that. It was a wrong number, my dude. So yeah, instead of the point of view characters being heroes, they're kind of just important characters in this universe who have kind of used the change in the power structure to kind of propel themselves forward. So I mentioned Allie, she uses her power to like perform miracles. She gets like praised as this new religious leader. Roxy gets really strong and uses it to grow her family's influence, and they're like smuggling drugs and all sorts. And like Margo doesn't really use her power, but she takes advantage of the fact that she now has the power. She feels more confident, but also she sets up like training camps for girls to go to learn to use their power for like self-defense, and she kind of sets up her own private military from these like training camps. And I think the closest we have to, I don't want to say wholly good, but like he's the most good of the point of view characters, is Tund, because he is a journalist and he is trying his best to like report on all the events as they happen and like bring people up to date with what's going on. But even he's not even good, he's just kind of neutral. Because he doesn't have the power, he is weaker. He's the underdog in this story, and he has to go through some really horrific stuff, and that's kind of the point of the book. The final thing I want to cover talking about the power is some people might be put off because it's clearly a political book. It's got a lot to say. To that, I would argue all sci-fi is political. This is just a lot more overt about it. Sci-fi as a genre kind of exists to like express worries and questions about society in an easy to understand way. Sci-fi is like a safe space to explore these questions in metaphor. You can put aliens in your book, and it's very easy to read the book as like, oh, the aliens are a stand-in for this marginalized group. It's something sci-fi does a lot. In this book, it's basically the women are stand-ins for men in real life. If that's gonna just straight up put you off the book, I'm not sure reading it is going to help. I don't know. Perhaps if that is something that puts you off reading a book like this, maybe you should give it a go. It might offer some new perspective on things. It is a very difficult read, and there are things in this book that are really horrific. They are kind of just played up versions of what happens in the world at the moment. They're only so extreme in this book because it's a recent change of power, and I don't really know how best to explain it. But yeah, I don't think there's anything in the book that is surprising, but it is still shocking. It's about electric. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm just I've kind of been struggling to express how I feel about it, and I just wanted to kind of talk for half an hour about this book and kind of work out what I was trying to say. And I might have got there. We'll find out when I edit the video. In conclusion, I liked the book a lot. Like, a lot. It's very well written. The characters are very good. The world building is excellent. The only things that put me off were the lack of plot. I mean, it's not a lack of plot, but there's not a lot that's like kind of pulling you forward. Once you started, the plot developments aren't going to be the things that are like keeping you hooked. It's just wanting to learn what happens to the characters. And ending wise, it kind of just stops. And in the story, it makes sense. Like, there is a reason that it just kind of stops. It's not that satisfying, I suppose. So yeah, the plot is something that is like a little bit of a problem, and also just the sheer amount of disturbing and distressing imagery that is in the book. It does make it difficult to read, and you will get to points in the book where you read something and you just want to stop reading because the thing that happened was really horrible. But I think it's worth it. And I would give it like 4 out of 5. Like, this is a really good book. So yeah, The Power. I am trying to read more books, so you might see more book reviews come up on the channel. I'm also starting a new job next week, which I'm very excited about, but it also means that I might have less time to record videos. I will still try to get something up every once in a while, but it might not be as frequent as once a week. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I'll still be posting videos over on Will's channel where we play games. I'll link it everywhere. And that's it. I'll see you next time. I don't know what I'll be on about next time. Well, it's a surprise. We'll see. Bye.